So this week, both the Maggid and Rabbi Yaakov have tips for us, tips how to behave in our daily lives. And again, they're going to revolutionize certain psukim, verses in the Torah that look at sort of what the Torah is talking about regarding dietary laws or what we can or can't eat, and how they're going to bring meaning into our daily lives. So the Maggid of Zlotchov, he looks at the verse, talk to the Israelites and tell them, these are the animals. This is the chaya that you can eat. This is the animal that you can eat from all of the behemoths, from all of the animals. And then, we have the different signs, right? So like it swallows, the food goes back up, and, the different signs of animals that we can eat, right? What makes a cow kosher as opposed to a lion. And then he says, we know, and this is a rule he always says, we know that the Torah isn't just stories, but rather it is eternal truths that are meant to help us do tshuva, help us each return to ourselves. And now he says he wants to understand what does it mean by food? When the Bible tells us here, this is what you can be eating, this is the animal, the chaya from all the behemoth. What are we talking about? And he says it's interesting that in grace after meals, you say zanet ha'olam kulo, right? We talk about God, we thank Him and praise Him for sustaining the world with food, for sustaining us at any given moment. And he says that's perplexing because we don't eat at any given moment. There are times when we eat. So what does achila, what does consumption mean? Rather, it means vitality, it means living. And this is, he says, what the verse means. When we feel that we are becoming behemoths, that we are becoming animals, right, in the sort of, drowning in the filth of this material world, then we need to eat. What does it mean we need to eat? We need to find God's vitality. How do we do this? By doing tshuva. And how do we do this? He says there are signs in all of the signs of the animals that are kosher. Through this, he teaches us, for example, the mishasat shesa, which is, to do with different, splits, differentiating, say, a camel from a cow. He says the word shasat shesa, all of these words describe, just like your yetzer hara, your evil inclination tries to bring you down, you need to go battle against it, bring it down, and then just like the kosher animal swallows, it brings up food back again and down, so too you need to uplift the sparks. This is a battle that you're going against your evil inclinations. Whenever you feel you're going down, learn from these verses how to sustain yourselves by eating in terms of bringing vitality back to your life, and we do this by doing tshuva. Rabbi Yaakov Abuhatzeirah has another interesting verse and another tip for us, and it's very interesting what he has to say. So he looks at the verse that talks where God says to Aharon and to his sons, you're not supposed to be drinking wine and getting drunk, right? You need to differentiate between what's sanctification and the mundane, so you need to be careful. And here too, Rabbi Yaakov wants to understand, what is this verse talking about? And so he says, the way I understand this is there's a famous saying the sages tell us, better practice than to teach, right? It's good to teach, it's good to learn Torah, but what you do with your Torah is what's more important. And he says this is what the verse is talking about. He says it's about leaders. He says Aaron is the numeric value of moreh, teacher. He is the pinnacle, the sort of higher. He is the archetypical leader or teacher. And what he's saying here is that what is this teacher trying to teach us? What is yain? What is the wine that we're supposedly not supposed to consume? The Torah. So a teacher's meant to consume Torah, but not get drunk by it. And what is get drunk by it? It means where you no longer differentiate between what you've been reading and the way you behave. And he says the biggest problem with this is that then everyone follows your lead. And he says what you're doing here, and this is fascinating, he says a person who studies Torah, the danger in studying Torah, but not then acting upon it, is that you are bringing the forces of evil into holy chambers. Right? This is radical. This is saying, he's actually saying here, advocating, I think, right? I don't want your Torah if you're not going to act upon it. It's that extreme because you're letting the forces of evil infiltrate into the holy chambers. And interestingly, he says the same thing when someone comes to give a chiddush, when someone comes to explain a verse in a new way. So he looks at the verses that deal with pure fish, right? A pure fish is a fish that has scales and certain characteristics. And he says, what are those scales? It's a shield. And in much the same way, a Torah scholar that wants to come and shed new light on a verse must shield his argument in the verses of the Torah, in the Talmud. And if you don't do this, then you, much like the person who's not practicing what you're preaching, you are bringing the forces of evil into holy chambers. So these are two very interesting tips that we get on verses dealing with, dietary laws and what we can drink and can't drink. Thoughts on the Torah portion of Shmini. Shabbat Shalom.